Hey everybody, it's Tony George from DocSports.com. A special guest today, Brett Ciancia. And this gentleman here, if you follow me on Twitter at TGeorgeSports, you saw me tweet this out. But this gentleman, at the beginning of the football season, a lot of us have a few Bibles that we trust for before the season, kind of prognostication, look aheads. Obviously, I've been using Phil Steele's publication forever. A couple others I look at that are more mainstream, like Lindy's and Athlon, and a couple of these others. But this year, I was fortunate enough to run across Brett's publication. And if you haven't heard of it, that's it right there, folks. It's called Pick Six Previews. And this is one hell of a publication and one that you need in your arsenal. These publications are a lot like when you're serious about betting sports. You need more than one outlet to shop your lines at. So out here in Vegas, I've got 4 or 5, 6 apps that, of sports books here in town. I want to get the best line. Well, you also want to shop around different perspectives. And Brett, you have put together, first of all, welcome to the show. Welcome to Doc Sports, and outstanding publication, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for having me on, and I really appreciate all the praise. Being considered with all those other legacy brands is an honor. That was really the goal when I launched this thing 10 years ago, was to get on that level. And over the last 10 years, I have the #1 title in prediction accuracy. I have the 5-year and the 3-year. So it's a one-man show, too. So I'm breaking down all 69 of these teams, and I'm really excited to dive into it with you. It's really an end of an era this year. It's a little bit nostalgic, this 2023 season. So I'm excited to break it down with you guys.
Yeah, we want to, I guess we'll talk about that real quick. And I'm, you're young, good looking, full of vigor, all that youth and enthusiasm. I'm past that now. I'm a dinosaur in the industry. I've been doing this 31, this will be my 32nd year in the business, but I've seen a lot of changes over those years, but none more as dramatic and quick as what's kind of went down in the last couple of weeks with the conference realignments. We're going to be talking about you at your young age are going to be talking about the good old days 3 or 4 years from now. Your thoughts on what's going on. I mean, the Pac-12 just kind of disappeared almost overnight out of nowhere. And just we got up in the morning, I'm like, what? What's going on? They're going there. They're Big 10, Big 12. Your thoughts on what's happening?
Yeah, well, despite my young age, I do love the history, the tradition of the sport. I love the old-fashioned regionality of college football. That's what I think makes it special. The in-state rivalries, the regional rivalries. And I grew up learning all the history, the old Southwest Conference, the Big 8, all that. So to see the Pac-12 go away, to be fully wiped off the map, I think is really a shame. Talk about a 110-year-old conference, really the West Coast presence of the sport. So there are some changes to the sport that are good, but overall, I think it's too much change too quick with the conferences. I think it really started with USC and UCLA jumping ship to the Big Ten, because that was the first time where it really became more than just regionality and geography. You could argue Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. They had a little bit of a border there with the SEC footprint, but it all changed with USC and UCLA leaving. And it's just it was a total collapse by the Pac-12 the last week or two. And just crazy change so quick. Like I said, end of an era, not just the conferences, but the playoff bracket changing, a lot changing in the sport.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dichotomy. It's just like anything else in the world. It's money and greed. I mean, and I'm hoping it doesn't ruin the sport. You got players getting nil contracts now. And
Yep.
and money and it's just basically a boot camp. It's almost like a farm system for the NFL, it seems, anymore, and not so much the innocence of college athletics, which we all kind of grew up with. It's there's more to it than I think the love of the game sometimes, and I think that's where we're kind of losing an edge, and that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Is it good for football? Is it good for television ratings? Is it good for an expanded playoff system with super conferences, and that's yet to be determined. I want to see how this all shakes out before I get overly excited about it. But nonetheless, yeah, the Pac 12. I understand a lot of these teams in the Mountain West and the Pac 12 that kind of go on, even the USCs and the UCLAs, the Washington and the Oregons. You'll occasionally see a USC or an Oregon game, when they're really, when they had Mariota and then Kelly was out there, and then, USC, with, they had Kiffin for a while. And then, of course, Lincoln Riley now has got them all, way up there in the rankings and with great player and all this, that, and the other. But, the West Coast teams did not get that much love on national TV, and not a lot of people saw these teams and the potential they had and how good they were, and being in the business, I've had to follow them, if through sheer attrition, if you wanted to find winners against the spread. Yeah. And you could always kind of find them if you followed. Like, I've always been into the Mountain West Conference because I think there's, like you're looking at things, win-loss and this, that, and the other. But from a point spread value and a power rating value, if you paid attention to them, you could find more opportunity there because of I think the lesser focus that was on them.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm based out of Pennsylvania. I think I have the Pennsylvania state record for hours of Pac-12 network viewer. I mean, I love watching that conference. I'm up till 2 a.m. like a crazy guy, four screens from noon till midnight. So I love Pac-12 network. I love the conference. A lot of different types of brands of football, coaching personalities. You get the Pacific Northwest, you get the desert, you get the coast with California. So you cover a lot, and it's a shame it's going away. And I agree with you about finding some opportunity. The team that really caught my eye as a program was Utah. Every year you hear about USC and Oregon, but a couple years back, Utah really caught my eye, and they've proven me right. Now back-to-back conference champs. I've got them returning to Las Vegas again this year, despite the heavy odds on USC again. So, yeah, there is opportunity to be had if you're up till 2 a.m. watching these games. I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, I'll never forget I had them in their opener last year against Florida, a game they grabbed, defeat from the jaws of victory. Couple of fumbles inside the 1 yard line in the fourth quarter. One of a fumble and an interception on the 1 yard line, if you can figure that. So yeah, that one still sticks in my memory. I had a relatively sizable move on that because I had bought into Utah. I like their coach a lot, and and I think that fire and brimstone, kind of a Joe Paterno, Tom Osborne type power football mentality he brought to Utah was something that really the Pac-12 had not really had to deal with. They weren't known for being that style of conference, and he's been very successful at implementing that out there, and I think they're going to play into the mix again this year.
Yeah, it's a good point about the physicality. I try and watch as many spring games as I can, and most of them, well, nowadays, a lot of them are just practices, but the ones that do play, the quarterbacks are in green jerseys. You can't touch them. Not at Utah. They're smashing each other every play, broken face masks. The physicality is on a different level. The confidence is there. The team culture is there. All the buzzwords, but it comes to life at Utah. Number one in my player development metric, year in and year out. It's great coaching. And then defensively, I had a chance to talk with Morgan Scalley. Most off seasons I talk with him. One of the best in the game, and they continue to churn out great teams. So I agree with you. They're a throwback kind of team, physical. They use their tight ends a lot, and it's a great environment too. That Rice Eccles night game, when the camera starts shaking, it's going to be a good game. So a lot of respect for Utah's program.
Yeah, we're going to get to, and by the way, folks, again, this is Brett Ciancia, and he is the publisher of this Pick Six Previews. And while you're listening to the show, you can go over to his Twitter account, Brett, and that is at Pick Six Previews, just says it's spelled out here. And then on your profile page, there's a link where you can get this publication. Tell the folks about that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the 12th year of Pick Six Previews, second year with the hard copy. So we have the hard copy magazine that Tony just showed you there. Those ship out in a day or two. In the meantime, when you buy the hard copy, you also get a digital copy emailed immediately. So Digital copies available. But yeah, on pick6previews.com, I've got some sample teams. You can see my advanced stats, but some sample pages of the X's and O's I talk about, and also some testimonials too. I mean, Tony had a great review there. The college game day guys have said similar. 24/7, Josh Pate. A lot of great testimonials there on the website too. So pick6previews.com, and yeah, I invite you to follow on Twitter too at pick6previews for weekly picks, all that kind of stuff as the season kicks off.
Yeah, the Bear over at ESPN, he loves you.
Yeah, Chris Falca, huge endorsement. He's one of the best in the game. Always brings sharp analysis on screen and on Twitter. So I really appreciated his kind words year in and year out.
And by the way, Brett is a Heisman Trophy voter.
Yeah, Heisman voter. I'm also on the All-American committee too for FWAA. So there's 11 of us that determine the All-American teams each year. So the only national guys are me and Phil Steele. So it's a great group of the best writers in the game. So that's truly an honor to do that and to be a Heisman voter. I vote on a bunch of different awards. So yeah, it's just really special. Probably the most rewarding part is being able to talk to so many of these head coaches and coordinators. Just great football minds, and picking their brains about program building, about recruiting, about X's and O's. It's been a great experience.
You've got a recruiting 5-year average. You've got something that I've been paying attention to a lot, and this is a very deep dive, folks. This is not glossed over service, kind of a consensus type look at things like many of them are. This is a deep dive. You got player development and win conversion charts. Your game grader, I really am liking and looking at. And when you look at how those games were graded, again, especially when you're talking in conference, and you're playing the same team again, and the returning starters, and then how they graded out, I saw like I'm a Nebraska Cornhusker. I'm an alum there. I lived there 35 years. And I was worried a little. I was looking at that Minnesota game to open up the season. We've got a new coach and all this, that, and the other, but their highest graded game last year was against Minnesota. And there's just little tiny tidbits in there. Game grader on the coaching carousel, your 5-year averages on that, 10-year offensive and defensive trends. I'm going to bring that up when I'm going to cherry pick your brain about a team. I don't agree with one of your rankings in the ACC.
Okay.
I think you're a little shy. I think you're a little shy on Louisville, but we're going to talk about it. But at the end of the day, let's talk quickly your final 4 teams, which is right on the front of the magazine. You've got Georgia, Michigan ranked 2nd, Florida State 3rd, which might surprise a lot of people. Clemson's getting a lot of buzz. And number 4, Ohio State. So let's just get into that. Those I don't have an argument with those, by the way. 2 out of the Big Ten versus 2 out of the SEC, which you're going to have some SEC people arguing with you about that, But at the end of the day, that would seem to me that you think that maybe the Big Ten would be stronger than the SEC, at least top heavy wise.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I think that top to bottom, the SEC is definitely the strongest in the country. Top to bottom, division-wise, SEC West still the toughest. But I see a scenario where Michigan and Ohio State, I think there's a big drop-off after the Big Ten's top 3. I think that you'll throw Penn State in the top 10 there. They're all playoff caliber. But from there's a huge drop-off, in my opinion. So I think that Michigan and Ohio State will both go 11-0 again, or be in the mix with 1 loss right at the end of the season. Before their matchup. So it really came down that last spot between Ohio State, a conference runner-up, or an Alabama or LSU runner-up from the SEC. And I just think that the loser of that title game in Atlanta will be boxed out of the title game, because I have Georgia number 1, like you mentioned. I think that they'll win the SEC title and box out the SEC West. But I mean, if you throw Alabama and LSU into the ACC, into the Pac-12, the Big 12, I have them winning. I mean, every conference. It's just they're in the toughest one with Georgia right now.
And you, of course, week 0, you open up with a couple of teams you mentioned, Florida State and LSU. That was what? Yeah. What was that? 24-23 game last year. I I think LSU pulled it out the last second, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was
now
crazy.
they're, yeah,
Yeah, it was crazy. There was a muff punt. There was a missed extra point as time
right.
expired. It was a wild start. It was a good foreshadowing for a crazy season. But yeah, both teams are a lot more improved since they were that time. I mean, Florida State grew as the season went on. You saw LSU really improved as the season went on too. Won the SEC West in Brian Kelly's first year. But yeah, that's going to be a tough opener for my Florida State playoff pick. I know that I think LSU is about 2.5 points favorite right there on the neutral site, but even if Florida State gets a close loss there, I think they still run the table in the ACC. Big drop off for me after the Florida State Clemson tier in the ACC. So I think the Florida State runs the table. The thing with them, and this might surprise some folks, last year was really the breakthrough for them statistically. I called them a stat giant where they were top 10 or top 20 in almost all my metrics. Pick your stat, offense, defense, they were up there. And the key is that this time around, they bring the entire roster back. They're number one in returning production, usually a strong indicator towards year-over-year progress. And then the key kicker here is that they've really embraced the transfer portal under Mike Norvell, not just
Yeah,
signing guys, but turning them into all-conference players. And
yeah.
on the other end of the spectrum there, Clemson has ignored that portal. So I think that Florida State bolstered their roster with All-Americans and all-conference guys, while Clemson is thin at some key units. So in that head-to-head, I have Florida State prevailing.
Well, that's September 23rd, and that is at Death Valley. That's at Clemson. That's going to be one of the top games of the year. Well, that is the game of the year in the ACC. I mean, let's not blow smoke up anybody's rear end. That's national title implications. That game right there. Mm-hmm. So that'll be interesting. I'm not sold on Clemson's offense. I agree. I like Florida State in the ACC over Clemson. I do. And Clemson's got a lot of things. I love that Shipley at running back. He is a game changer for them. He's unbelievable. They got a really good 1-2 punch at quarterback or at running back. I'm not sold on their quarterback, but one thing I am sold on them this year, and something that I heard Dabo Swinney talk about the other day, maybe one of the best defenses he's ever had.
Oof. That's big praise considering the run of defenses they had under Venables.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that'd be a game changer for real.
And as I look at the roster and some of the matrices, not only with your publication, but weighing it up against others, I think Dabo is making himself feel better because I've seen better. I think they've had better defenses, but I think this could be FSU's year. One team I wanted to talk about, and I'll just tell you what Brett's got here. Let's just talk about the top seven, because the others, the ACC's top heavy, just like the Big Ten is, but you've got Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Miami, Louisville, and North Carolina State. Now, I'm big on Louisville this year, especially over their season win totals of 8. It was an 8-5 team last year. Now, Braum moves in. He was a quarterback there. I believe his brother is the offensive coordinator, and I think he might have played quarterback at Louisville too, if I'm not mistaken. They've got a lot of returning starters, and if you look at their schedule, they avoid the top 3 teams in the conference, which is, they don't play Clemson, they don't play Florida State, and they don't play North Carolina. This could easily be a 4-0, 5-0 team out of the gate, and I've got them power rated higher over Miami. I can't get on Miami right now the way they've played the last couple of years, Brett.
Yeah, well, first with Louisville, I agree with you on the schedule. That popped out right away because now with them going away from the Atlantic and the Coastal, a lot of the predictable matchups were thrown away. So I had to do a deep dive on schedule, the lineup there in the ACC and the Big 12 now with 14. But what popped out with Louisville, they avoid the top 3, like you mentioned. They also draw 4 of the bottom 6. So they're getting a lot of the bottom tier ACC teams. They're going to stack some wins for sure. The thing that stood out too, though, in non-conference is they draw Notre Dame and Kentucky, who I have both in my top 25. So for an overall win total, 8's about right. It's gonna be tough with those 2 non-conference games, but and usually you're shied away from a coaching transition season, but I trust Coach Braum a lot. He built Purdue into a winner. I had a chance to talk with him. He talked about his fun offense, like the wide open passing attack and how it attracts transfers. Fast forward a year, that really came true. A top 15 transfer class brought in his former quarterback, two of them actually, with
Yeah.
Plummer and Allen coming back in from Purdue. So I think they're going to be strong. Now, the debate with them versus Miami, I could see either way. I ultimately went with Miami because I think they're in for a second year bonus under Coach Cristobal. He's got a proven track record of building offensive lines. He did so at Oregon, turned them into one of the best in the country. So I think there's just too much firepower on Miami's roster now in a second season. It was awful last year, but I think they're going to get a lot of stat gains and some win gains too. It has to get better in year two. That's what I'm banking on.
Well, their rushing offense last year, if you look at per play, yards per play was eighth in the. Now they had a running quarterback in Cunningham last year too, which let's not forget, they're going to go to a totally different scheme now. But these and that's the one thing I always look at when it comes to new coaches, going to reinvigorate the program. Now this isn't a rebuild. This isn't a total rebuild like what Matt Rule has at Nebraska. This isn't a complete rebuild. This is just an upgrade a little bit. I think they had a talent drain on defense that you have to be a little concerned about. But like I said, the schedule to me, and remember last year they played Kentucky. They were like a 3-point favorite in that game. I think Will Levis or something was out, and I can't remember what the scenario was there. They were laying 3 in that game. They got blown out completely out of the stadium in that game last year. And the one thing about it is Braun knows about that tradition and that in-state rivalry, and they'll be ready for that one. And you think Kentucky's going to be able to replace that quarterback and still be a top 25 team, huh?
Yeah, with Kentucky, while they do lose Levis, they get their coordinator back from so Liam Cohen. He really helped them out up until 2021. Last year, he went to the pros and the offense collapsed. And I don't know if it's all that reason, but I think they're going to get a boost coaching wise with him now back in Lexington. And they hit the transfer portal pretty well. They brought in Devin Leary from NC State. I think the guy put up 30 touchdowns, 5 picks in 2021. So it's not a total drop off there. They continue to build great offensive lines. I think that'll improve after a rare down year last year. And coordinator White on defense continues to do it year in and year out. So I think they're a tough team. And I think that Louisville's had struggle with them. But I don't want to be too down on Louisville. It's funny, when I put the book out, putting them 6th in the ACC, I thought that was relatively high. But, the schedule definitely helps that. And, I think it's exciting, too, for a program like Louisville to bring back their former star, their native son, the Braun brothers. They wanted this about 3 or 4 years ago when he had success at Western Kentucky, but he wasn't ready yet. I think that the Purdue experience was great for him. He won a division title. He learned how to build a defensive staff, obviously an offensive guy, but really built the defense up there. I think he's more experienced. He's a more ready coach to take over. And I think it's perfect timing for the program and for him. So exciting times for Louisville. I know that fan base is excited.
Well, very quickly, and we're going to switch gears real quick to Big 12. We'll let you go. Again, we have Brett Ciancia, and he is the author and publisher of Pick Six Previews, folks. And get over at Pick Six Previews on Twitter. There's a link to get this publication, this hard copy, and you get a digital download as well. Email to get the digital copy. If this isn't in your arsenal, it needs to be. I will be my first year buying it. I can't believe I hadn't heard of it. I just was kind of this is why it pays you to kind of go on Twitter and follow some guys you respect. So a guy that I respect brought this up. I'm like, well, what the hell's that?
Good.
And so you went and look, and sometimes you spend $25 to $27 or whatever it is, which isn't even a bar tab for 5 minutes anymore, folks. So invest in your passion in sports wagering and help your power ratings out by taking a look at this completely kind of unique perspective into things with a very well-educated young man. But very quickly, I'm not a big Mac Brown fan. Mac Brown has never won a big game in his life, and the only time he won a big game is when he had Vince Young at quarterback, and he could have won if he was playing for – Tulane could have won a national title with him. That's how good Vince Young was as a college football quarterback. We won't discuss the pro career, but nonetheless, you got them ranked third in this ACC conference, and you think May could carry him, because I'm telling you, their defense sucked so bad last year, it was pathetic. No matter what he put up, and he put up some numbers. He's probably top 5 in the, you're a Heisman voter. He's definitely in the Mayas for that. I mean, the numbers he puts up, and he's talented as all get out. But you think Matt Brown could coach him to a third-place finish and top 25 type team?
Yeah, well, when you look at the ACC, I think there's a big drop-off after Florida State and Clemson. It was really tough to pick a third-place team, actually. I mean, Pittsburgh, I love Coach Narduzzi. His defense, what he builds every year. They do lose some small conference guys, though. From there, who else? Miami, we talked about. They have some limitations and uncertainties. Louisville's a transition team. So it really just fell back to UNC, and I trust the offense. It's really just a play on Drake May, really. I think 9 starters are back. They added Nate McCollum from Georgia Tech. He's a game-changer receiver. So I think it's just the continuity on offense. A lot of it's back, a second-year bonus for May. And that offense is going to have to carry him, because defensively it has been a struggle. I was hoping that Gene Chizik would help fix it. I know he's still committed to it, and we'll see. But it hasn't clicked yet on defense. All these years, all these top 20 recruiting classes, it hasn't clicked yet. But I think the offense is strong enough to carry them to third place.
Yeah, it always concerns me. I'm not a guy that likes to bet spreads with North Carolina unless it's the over.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just, if you just blindly bet them over for 12 games, you're probably going to go 9-3. I mean,
probably.
I mean, it's just that they're one of those type of teams that, if you want to start laying 7.5, 8 with them, I don't care whether they're playing App State or, a bottom feeder. It seems like a lot of teams last year had their best offensive game of the season when they played North Carolina. And when it comes,
I don't think it's a coincidence. Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence either. Part of that too is pace of play, and they had Phil Longer there, one of my favorite coaches to talk to. They went at lightning pace. I mean, now with him at Wisconsin, we'll see if UNC keeps up that fast pace, but that plays into your over number. So if Iowa was your under, UNC used to be the over team, but we'll see if they keep that fast pace now with Chip Lindsey coming in.
Well, this is kind of an interesting year in the Big 12, and we'll do this in short form here because we're getting long in the tooth. But your top 6. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do your top 7 because you've got a tie.
Yep.
And you've got Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor. Then you have a tie between Central Florida and Oklahoma State. And obviously Oklahoma State lost a lot. They lost their quarterback. Where'd he go to?
At Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, yeah.
Sanders, you talk about a 4-year starter, and he picks up and goes to the portal, battling down at Ole Miss right now. That's one of the best quarterback battles in the country heading into fall camp.
A friend of mine out here that does on the VSiN network, I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
Matt Humans, he is real down on Oklahoma State. They lost a lot in the transfer portal. They were decimated. They're going to struggle this year. I think Gundy's a good coach. And they've done better defensively, getting that part of their team shored up versus years past where he had the Mac Brown attitude. He learned, I just can't outscore everybody. We've got to hold some people down to 20, 24 points. We can't win 48, 44 ball games every week. I'm going to run everybody in the ground doing it, through sheer attrition, especially when you don't have a lot of depth to do that for an entire season. It wears on you. But Texas is an interesting scenario to me because I'm not so sure if Sarkisian can get over the hump or not. That's my biggest concern. And of course, the Brent Venables experiment year one was a total debacle for Oklahoma last year, but it looks like you've got them rebounding. And I got to talk a little bit about Chris Klein in Kansas State, because what a coaching job he did. And
Yeah.
that is still a team. I think 1, 2, and 3 here could be a coin flip.
Yeah, it's a really competitive conference. First, I'll start with Oklahoma State real quick. I agree. I'm very pessimistic on them, and I had them rated lower power ratings wise. But what caught my eye was schedule. Again, they draw the easiest schedule in the Big 12. They draw the bottom 7 of the conference. All 7 of the bottom ones they draw, and they only play 2 of the top 5. So, but yeah, they've had limitations on offense. The offensive line, their rushing attack was the worst in the Gundy era last year. Quarterback gone, transfer portal exodus. Jim Knowles now 2 years gone from the defense. Of course, he took over Ohio State's D. So I was really down on them until I saw the schedule. I think they'll finish middle of the pack. But at the top of the conference, I do have Texas. I know that it's dangerous here in August to talk high expectation with Texas. They burn you every year, but this year is different, as funny as it sounds. I mean, this year seems different. You look at their position group, go position by position. They're loaded everywhere. It's 5 stars. It's transfers coming in. It's returning production, returning starters. And I like the coordinators too. Pete Kwiatkowski, he built a winner at Washington. Kyle Flood continues to build strong offensive lines on offense. Quinn Ewers, a second-year bonus at quarterback. There's really a lot to like. The receiving corps could be one of the best in the country. So, and it's kind of fitting in their final season in the conference. It'll be a heck of a farewell tour if they can go win the thing. But beware of them with high expectations in the preseason, as always.
And they got a man,
Oklahoma,
and they got a Manning at quarterback there at Texas too.
They do, and I don't know that we'll see too much
that.
of him yet. Yeah, that could be a quarterback of the future situation, because I think with Ewers, you do have a solid player, and I think he was thrown in as a freshman, had some ups and downs, but remember, he took Alabama. He played them pretty well until he was injured. So he showed a lot of flash last year. And
it's interesting because in your publication here, and folks, again, at Pick 6 Previews on Twitter, go to the link, get the damn magazine. I'm telling you right now. But on your Big 12 unit ranks, we're talking Texas, quarterback, 2nd ranked, running back, 5th ranked, wide receiver, tight end, 1st, offensive line 1st, defensive line 1st, defensive back 1st, linebacker 2nd. But interesting, you've got Quentin Ewers on your 1st and 2nd team. And by the way, Brett knows a little bit about this. All-American voter, Heisman Trophy voter here. You've got Ewers 2nd, and to many people's surprise, you've got Jalen Daniels, quarterback of Kansas University, as your 1st team all Big 12 quarterback. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Jalen Daniels in Kansas real quick.
Yeah, well, Tony, it's Pick 6 Previews history here. It's my 12th season doing it. It's the first time I've moved Kansas out of last place. It was always the automatic pick, but I really respect what they're building over there. You saw their offensive breakthrough last year under Lance Leipold and Andy Kotelnicki. And yeah, with Jalen Daniels, you're getting a dual threat guy. He's really sharp with the ball. And remember that he was knocked out from a decent chunk of the season. So his stats would have been even better. But when you look at it per play or per pass, he's top 5 in the nation in every category. And they returned 10 starters, the whole offensive line, running backs, receivers, everyone's back. Plus they got some additions. So I think a full season healthy, he's going to put up a ton of stats. So that's kind of a stat play. I think they're one of the most complete offenses in the conference. So yeah, it's must be weird to see, but a Kansas quarterback, their 1st team, he certainly deserves it, and they deserve all the positive pub they're getting as a program. And look for more, lighting up the scoreboard in Kansas this year.
Yeah, folks, bear in mind when you're looking ahead, they got lines out for every week. Kansas is an underdog in a lot of games, and when they're a big underdog with a quarterback with that much potential and 10 returning starters from a very good team that really competed with almost everybody last year, and might have ripped off 6 or 7 wins out of the gate or whatever it was. I mean, I've got friends. I lived in Kansas City 12 years. I've got tons of friends that are KU grads that I had
Yeah.
to give him a little crap. I said, okay, I've heard Rock Chalk Jayhawk now for 20 frickin' years. You're driving me crazy. However, now you're kind of bandwagoning on your football program, but I got to give them some street cred. They had a hell of a ball club. I think they got a great coach there. One team I did want to ask you about, one team I took over the season win totals this year. I think Texas Tech's going to make a strong showing this year in this conference. Tell me your thoughts on Texas Tech a little bit. I like their coach.
Yeah, I love the coach. Joe McGuire, he's Mr. Texas football. He was a high school coach for 20 something years, won some state titles, and quickly ascended to the head coaching role at one of these Power Five teams. Really impressive story. And he's made Texas Tech exciting again. He's crushing it in the recruiting game. They got the fundraising to get that stadium renovation, transfers being pulled in. There's a lot of excitement, and I think they're positioned well in this new Big 12 or Big 16, whatever you call their new conference. They're positioned very well. You got a great coaching staff there. It's a fun offense. It's next level, cutting edge, air raid. And on defense, Tim DeRuyter, proven name, proven product there. Your play with Texas Tech this year is if you like returning production, because a lot of that team is back. They get a healthy quarterback with Tyler Shuck back. They got key decisions by their defensive line and their corners to return. Those guys all could have gone pro, but they got some key NFL decisions back into Lubbock. So kind of fits the profile of Kansas State last year, only in the sense of it's a very veteran team. So very different styles of play and coaching, but very veteran is what I would say about Texas Tech. And I have them pre-ranked 25th. They crack into my top 25. I don't see them winning the thing, but they're definitely going to compete.
Easily be an 8-9 win team if they play to potential. Easily. If they stay healthy at skill positions and do some good things. I think they have the potential here to be, instead of 5th in the conference where you've got them ranked, and I kind of got them and TCU kind of flip-flop. I'm a little concerned about the drop-off at TCU, and Sonny Dice can keep it up now that after last year, but at day's end, I think Texas Tech has a lot of potential. And I tell you what, any of these top teams that are playing them, you don't bring your A game, they'll beat you.
Yeah, for sure. You saw them beat Texas and Oklahoma last year, first time in school history in the same year. You also saw them storm the field 3 times in Lubbock, and that home stadium really deserved it. They've been through some lean years there ever since Mike Leach left, but the momentum is at an all-time high. Usually they collapse late season or they lose a bowl game, but it was a strong finish. And like we said, a lot of it is back. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see them climb higher. I just look a little bit more. I like what TCU has on defense. I like what Kansas State has proven on the field and their player development. So it's tough to crack into the top 4 for me with them, but solid top 25 team.
Yeah, and you think that I thought Baylor had a downward spiral last year. Let's put it mildly. They did not play very well. Now you've got them in the top 6 here. You expect, and I like their coach. You expect them to play a little bit better this year, apparently.
Yeah, slightly better. I have them 6th in the conference, 38th overall out of the Power 5 teams. So really middle of the pack. If you look at their stat profile, very average everywhere. There weren't any real glaring issues. There weren't any super strengths. I think it's a middle of the pack team. What I really like, and you touched on, is Dave Aranda, a defensive genius. I think that they're in for a bounce back defensively, but I don't see them competing for the league anytime soon.
Yeah, between Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas State, and of course, the Red River War is going to determine all that. But at the end of see who's, because last year Texas just ran over them. That running back, I think he's still racking up yards and touchdowns. Even though he went to the NFL, but at days in here between Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas State, we're talking about spreads less than 6 points. No matter how you match them up. I think I've got them power rated where Kansas State 3rd, and against Texas, I've got them on a neutral site at plus 4.5. And you make a couple mistakes, throw 3 or 4 interceptions, they'll beat you. I think this is a real. The top 5 teams in this conference can compete. One more team I just wanted to talk about real quick was, for about 3 or 4 years there, even at Nebraska, after when we hired Scott Frost, one of our finalists was Campbell at Iowa State. He was up and coming out of Toledo, did some things at Iowa State. And, Purdy was quarterback there for 4 years, basically, before he went to the NFL. Had a couple of great tight ends. They had an NFL running back. Did a lot of things very well, upset a lot of good teams along the way. And he kind of had a downward spiral, much like Baylor did last year. Your thoughts on Iowa State this year? You've got them as a lower tier. You got BYU in front of them.
Yeah. So with Iowa State right away, stat profile wise, they are just like Iowa, actually. Their Cy-Hawk rival. It's all defense, and it was no offense last year. They really struggled on offense, having to replace Brock Purdy, like you mentioned, but also had to replace some linemen. And that's where they had their biggest flaw was on the offensive line. And I think that he made a great hire bringing in Ryan Clanton from Northern Iowa. That might sound random, but that's an FCS team that always fights hard against the FBS teams. And he had more linemen drafted from the FCS than Iowa State has had the last decade. So he's bringing in a plus coach there on the offensive line. A lot of returning starters on offense, but really it's the defense for me that I continue to like. It's John Haycock's dime stack is 3-3-3. I really like watching that thing. They had to get creative at Iowa State because as the rest of the conference was innovating offensively with all these 5-star weapons, they hunkered down on defense and figured out how to solve it. And that's been their differentiator. But yeah, as it relates to the conference race, I see them middle of the pack, slightly below the middle, in a three-way tie for 9th out of 14. So I don't see them competing this year, and they're going to have to rebuild.
I'll tell you one thing. I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska 35 years, and I'm a Big 8, Big 12 guy. I've been to Jack Trice Stadium, I don't know how many times over in Ames, Iowa. That is the biggest snake pit in the world to play in. That is and even the basketball team at Hilton Coliseum there, both their home court and home field advantages are much more than what people give them credit for. And Iowa State has some of the best fans in the country. They travel well. Always win the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City in basketball. The whole town's Iowa State. I mean, you think that Kansas is 20 minutes away, but it was just crazy. So I hope to see them come back a little bit because I think he's a good coach. I just think he fell on some hard times and maybe some of his philosophies weren't coming to fruition. Hopefully they can turn that around and get the offense going this year. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Brett Ciancia. He is the publisher of Pick Six Previews. Brett, tell them how they get a hold of this publication. You got to have this in your arsenal, folks.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tony. I appreciate the praise and for having me on. It's been a great chat. Love talking football with you guys. Pick6previews.com is the only place to order it. We have the hard copy edition, and it'll be mailed out a day or two. In the meantime, you also get the digital PDF version emailed over to you. So pick6previews.com. There's samples, testimonials, everything you want to see there. On Twitter, at Pick6Previews, all spelled out. And I really appreciate it. We still have plenty of time to preview the season. And I think we're in for a special one, the end of an era. So, it's almost an antique anymore, seeing the Pac-12 in a book and, all these old divisions are going away. So it's very nostalgic if you want to get the 2023 edition.
Yeah, that's for sure, folks. And it's less than $30 and he ships it to you. It's again, it's always a great idea if you're going to put a little bit of money on games to have more than one outlet, more than one perspective, weigh those perspectives against your own knowledge. And that's exactly what Brett's giving you here out in the marketplace. So be sure and check that out. Be sure and check out DocSports.com for this football season. We got a crap load of articles and conference picks and season win total picks. We get a free $60 to anybody who's never been a member at Docs as we enter our 53rd year in the marketplace. And we'll park $60 in any new account. You don't like me, I don't care. We got 11 other guys over there that are ready to go, reputable, and get the season started off with some wins. And of course, I'm feeling really good about my knowledge this year that I've been able to pick this up. And trust me, I'll be texting Brett and picking his brain during the season via text and seeing what he thinks about a few things. That's for sure. So I'll put that to good work for you as well. Folks, thanks for tuning in, and have a great football season.
Thanks, Tony.